Today, for our Thrive Thursday Masterclass, we have the amazing Mary Gaul. Mary is a certified business coach who facilitates conversations with business owners individually or in groups, asking questions, being a thought leader, and providing resources to help you gain clarity. This method, used in her business, Success Magnified, helps entrepreneurs to see the big picture, prioritize goals, find practical solutions and new ideas for growth and success, and build accountability, all while having some fun. Thanks for being here, Mary.
Yay, thank you. Thank you. I was telling Whitney a bit earlier before we hopped on the call. I took the content for today, which is all around business systems cleanup. It's a four-part series that I did a few years ago. And so I updated it and just crammed it all into 1 hour. So I'm going to be talking really fast and going through some of these tools. I'll be sharing my screen in different ways as we hop into some of those slides and showing you some of the ways that I use these tools or use these tips, tricks, and tools, right? So we are going to dive right in because I've got a lot of content for you here. So if you have a question, you can throw it in the chat or just interrupt me if you have a question, if I'm going too fast, and I'd be happy to answer it for you. So let me pull up my slides here. So I am Mary Gaul, owner of Success Magnified. Let's see, let me go from the slides. Are you guys seeing the right? There we go. Now you're seeing my big slide? Okay.
Yep.
So we're here about business systems cleanup. It's a 1 hour power session, right? To just kind of go through some of these essential systems in our business and what we can do to clean them up. We're here with Leap for Ladies, which Colleen Bigg founded this group. Whitney and I are both part of that group. So a little history. I have 25 plus years in the corporate marketing, communications, and administration world. Then I spent 10 years running a law firm, did everything but practice law or anything legal related, but I ran all the other aspects of the office. I started my first company in 2013, so 11 years ago already. It's called The Gift of Time. It's a virtual assistant company. I still own and operate that business. I started my second company in 2015, Success Magnified, which is where I spend 90% of my time, just because I love working with women entrepreneurs and being a business coach. So that's what I do in that company. I've written a couple best-selling Amazon best-selling books. And I am the wife to my husband, James. I need to update this picture now that we've got new pictures, right? But I'm married to James for 31 years, and these are my two beautiful daughters, 25 and 28-year-old daughters. And I am part mermaid. I love being on the water, around the water, in the water. We just are wrapping up on the water networking. I do that every summer. So if you're ever in Colorado in the summer and you want to join me on the paddleboard, please reach out and let me know. It's been so warm here. I think I am going to try and go on Saturday. It's going to be in the 80s still. So I'm going to get one more paddle in October, which is kind of crazy for us here in Colorado. Okay, so business systems cleanup. It's time. If you've been in business for more than a year, you have created systems in your business, intentionally or non-intentionally, right? You've figured out a way to do things repeatedly over and over again, or maybe you're recreating the wheel every time, right? So either way, you've got a lot of pieces out there. And our business is just like a great machine, right? The more we keep our systems clean and keep all of those systems running well, the better off our business will run, right? So we're going to dive into just 4 areas of business today: our calendars, our desktop and files, our finances, and our emails. And I'm going to go through kind of what some best practices might be, and then have tips, tools, and tactics for each one of those areas. So before we jump into calendars, we need to spend just a little bit about talking about time, right? And how we're spending our time. So who has heard of the Pareto principle, right? You can just raise your hand. I can kind of see everybody over there. Or the 80-20 rule, right? So that was created by Vincenzo Alfredo Pareto, is his full name. He was an Italian economist, and he was hired by the Italian government to study mainly around the finances around crops and farmers who owned more land and were producing more goods and that kind of stuff. And he started noticing this principle, this rule, about the 80-20 rule. And so it turns out that 20% of people's input, what they're putting into their business, yield 80% of their results, but 80% of their inputs only yielded 20% of their results. And you would see this in finance, in nature. And so I'll show you a few other places where you might see this rule happening, right? So for those of us in Colorado, if you fix 20% of the roads, you could fix 80% of the traffic, right? So in Colorado, we have I-25 and I-70. If you fix those two roads without traffic, you would fix 80% of the traffic jams, right? In our state. We tend to have friend groups, right? And we tend to spend 80% of our time with 20% of our people, right? With our friends. And then our closets, we can see that rule in our closets. We tend to wear 20% of our clothes 80% of the time, right? And you could all recognize as it's time for us to switch seasons too, right? So that's the 80-20 rule. And we need to look at it as far as how we put things on our calendars, how we're spending our time. So if 20% of your time leads to 80% of your results, what percentage of time are you spending on activities that directly generate income, right? Because the reverse is true. 80% of our time only leads to 20% of our results. So when we're looking at what kind of things we're putting on our calendars, we need to pay attention to what are the things that are directly generating income. We want to make sure those things get on our calendars first and effectively, right? And not fill our calendars with this 80% of stuff that only leads to 20% of our results, right? So just take a moment before you start looking at cleaning up your calendar and look at how are you spending your time, focusing on the money makers and limit the time wasters. So for example, I get clients from networking, yes. So I have my networking built into my calendar, right? But also from speaking and doing webinars like this one and doing podcast interviews. And so if my goal is to have 2 podcast interviews per month, because that gets me in front of more people who can hear me talk, and then they book a call with me and convert into clients, right? So then I need to make sure I'm actively spending time to get booked on podcasts, right? Because that's one of my that's one of my 80% tasks. So making sure I have some time spent each week to get booked on podcasts, follow up with podcast hosts, all of those kind of things, or book myself for speaking gigs, then that's one of my 20% that leads to 80% of my results. So again, looking at our tips, tools, and best practices. So when you're jumping in to clean up your calendar, look at, kind of what is your 20%, and is that 20% on your calendar consistently? Right. So if it's speaking, if it's networking, if it's, whatever you're doing that's driving the most results in your business, for Kelly, it could be blogging, right? With your blogging. So do you have time on your calendar on a regular basis to do those tasks? So that's why I wanted to kind of take that little shift over to talking about the 80-20 rule, because it does make a difference when you're cleaning up. You don't want to just clean up random things on your calendar. You want to make sure you're getting rid of the things that aren't producing results and adding in the things that are producing results. So when you're doing your cleanup in your calendar, set up recurring blocks, right? So it's a good time to go back and look. I have lots of recurring blocks. I'm a big time block person. I love that whole method. But sometimes after you've had a time block on your calendar for a while, how many of you just kind of ignore it, right? The brain just doesn't even see it anymore and you don't honor that time. I have some every Monday that's like, go do coursework, right? For all these courses that I purchased that I need to go and watch the videos or whatever. And I just usually blow right over that. Every once in a while I'll open it up and I keep the information in there. I do want to share my screen here. So I'm going to minimize that and go into my calendar. So just so you can see, because I talk about color blocking. So I love how colorful my days get. But I do, whenever I add something, I go in and add it to a certain task, right? So you can just set these up. I use the G Suite, so I'm assuming you can do the same thing in Outlook. But
Mary,
it's
we still only see your
oh
presentation because that's probably the screen that you shared.
Oh yes, thank you. Let me stop sharing here and then go back in. Thank you for that, Whitney, because otherwise people would be like, hi, there's more people on the call. So hello. Let me share screen again. And then I'll just share this screen so that you can see. So, okay, now you can see my calendar. Yes. So if you go into, I'll go back out to this. So here's my calendar. This is for today, right? So I've got some admin stuff. This was networking. Green is networking. This is coaching. This is personal. So drive time, speaking. I just did a podcast. This is me speaking again. So if I click on this, I can see all of my different categories that I can color code things with. So when I'm looking at my day, I kind of know what I've got myself set up for, right? Or for, yesterday or, whatever it is. So I can see kind of what I've got on my list. I've got some yellow is my time, networking time, those kind of things. So coaching blocks are green. So it's a good way for you to just visually color code things if it helps you to see how you're spending your day. The next thing is, here's my coursework block that I was telling you about, right? So if I click in there, I've got the information on the courses right there. So I don't have to go up. If I click on this work block, I can say, okay, here's all the things I can go and do and watch and be part of, right? Let's see which one I want to click on and go and take some action on, right? But it's great if you can put it right in the notes of the appointment, so that way you have it ready to go. You don't have to go somewhere else and look for it or find the login or the password, because the more obstacles we can create on our calendar for us not to get something done, especially if it's a recurring kind of thing we need to do, then, it's just one more hurdle we have to jump over before we get started. So let me go back to my slides here so you can see the slides again. Good. Okay, awesome. So yes, recurring blocks, if you've got them already in there, make sure you're actually honoring the time or put the information in there that you need to, and then review any current ones. If you're never using that block of time, get it off your calendar, right? Just get that mental energy go. We talked about color codes and the appointments. So adding your Zoom information, inviting the guests, make sure you're naming your appointments so that they make sense to everybody, and then add the notes into the appointments or the calendar blocks, right? So that it's right there in the appointment itself. All right, so if you use a scheduler like Calendly or Acuity, or there's many of them out there, right? But it's a good time to go look at what kind of appointments do you have in there, right? So I went and looked, I use Calendly. I've been using that for probably 6 years now. And I went in there the other day to edit one of my calendars, and I was like, gosh, I have to go to the second page now. How many appointments do I need, right? So I was able to delete some of those because there were some that were like 15-minute Q&A about a workshop I was doing last year or something like that. I can get rid of that appointment type, right? So go into your scheduler and just make sure, are the appointments you have still relevant? Are they still have the right availability set up? Maybe you don't want to take client calls on Monday anymore, right? So go in and adjust those things there, clean that up. And then if you have been a part of other people's calendars, this goes back to like Gmail, Google calendars specifically are shared a lot. Like if you join a course or you join a workshop or something where they've got calendar appointments, and they'll say, we'll share our Google Calendar with you, and now you've got it on yours. Can you get rid of that one? Can you delete it? Is the course done? You can get those things cleaned off. I do also have on my calendar a budget. So I created a budget calendar, which has been very helpful for me. So I can see they're all in red on my color code, right? They're all in red, and they're always in the 6 to 7:30 hour in the morning. So they never conflict with anything else. But I put in there, anytime I have a recurring payment, I go in and create a calendar event with the payment and the bank account that it's coming out of. And then, it'll just be set up the recurring payment. This happens on the 12th of every month. So that way I can look at my calendar for the week and see what's coming out of my bank account each month. If there's some things that happen, renewals that happen annually or whatever, I'll see those coming up. So that's just a great way to add into your calendar some of those things that you may not think about putting on your calendar. But budgets are a great thing to put on there. And then if you have time set up like for a weekly review of things, Or like I have one at the end of the month, the final Friday of the month. I kind of have a month in review, and I have a list of 5 questions in there that when I open up that calendar, I can say, okay, what happened in my business this month, right? Look at my profit and loss. What did I do for marketing? How many clients did I talk to? That kind of stuff. So it's just quick review questions, but that goes in that recurring block. And then tasks and reminders. So again, I'm focusing primarily on Google. I have Outlook with my other business, but I think Google is just so much more user-friendly. So this is the one I use 90% of the time. But at the top of any email, you'll see this little menu, and sometimes we kind of space it out because we just don't look at it that often. But if you click on any of these things, they all have an action, right? And some of these we know, we can forward, we can unread the message. This one's snooze. So if you want to snooze that message and have it pop up in your inbox next week, you can do that. And then you can put them in folders. This one allows you to tag. But if you click on these 3 buttons here, you'll see, and I'll try and go back to my calendar. Or this isn't an email, but this is how you get something on your calendar, right? So here's this menu up here. If you click on the little 3 dots, the hamburger, then you can say create an event. So while you're in your email, if you need to add this to your calendar, you can do it straight from the email. So if I say create an event, this one was about the podcast that I just did. So we'll see what kind of date it will grab because we just did the podcast. But yes, okay, so it's telling me this is your podcast. This is the date because it's pulling it from the email. It pulls in the information from the email into the notes of the event itself. And the caution is, so if you just want this on a reminder, you want to build it on your calendar, it automatically adds in anybody that was on the email. So if you don't want them in your calendar, you don't want them on this calendar event, you just have to go and delete them. But this is a great way if you've got something that's a task related thing and you want to make sure it gets on your calendar so you don't forget about it. You can go in and just click that button, this more button, and say add to or create an event. And it will create the event for you. And then you can go in and you can adjust the date and time. If there's a date and time in there, it'll grab that one. But if you don't have one, then you next week or whenever you wanted to have the reminder on your calendar. And then it will create the calendar for you, right? And then make it this would be a speaking event for me because it's a podcast. So I would want to make sure it's speaking, right? So I'm not going to save that because I already did that podcast just a minute ago. But that's how you can easily from your email add a calendar event so that you can get those things on your calendar and then they don't slip through the cracks. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint here. Okay, next we're going to jump into part 2. Like I said, I know I'm talking really fast, but there's a lot of information to cram into this hour. So part 2 is your desktop and your electronic files. How many of you store a lot of things on your desktop, right? I try not to, but sometimes for some reason, oddly, we're going to talk about syncing your Google Drive or your Dropbox into your file manager, right? So for some reason, my Gmail gets disconnected, my Google Drive gets disconnected, I have to throw things on my desktop to save them. And after a while, it gets a little clunky, a little cluttered, and you're like, oh, there's too many things on my desktop. So we're going to look about how to do that. I'll go through these slides and then I'll show you my desktop so you can see them in action, right? Or you can play around as I'm going through. But when you're on your desktop, you can right click and you're on your desktop and select the option sort by in the menu. And then you can sort by name, you can sort by type of file, you can sort by date modified, so that if you do have a bunch of stuff on there and you don't want to look through or you don't remember where it is stored on your desktop, then you can go through and just right click and say sort by, and it will kind of group things differently for you. You can also add file folders from that same thing. So if you right click anywhere on your desktop again, and if you're using a Mac, it might be different, right? So left might be a left click kind of thing. I don't know. I'm using PC just to let you know what I'm using. But you can create folders, and then if you have multiple things of the same kind on your desktop, if you want to keep all your pictures from your desktop instead of just random pictures floating around, you can create a pictures folder on your desktop and then put all of those things, drag them in there. So all that happens with the menu. And then you can click view on that same menu if you're right clicking, and click view, and you can change the size of the icons on your desktop. So if you need things to be a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller so you can get more things on there, right? You can change the size. And then you can uncheck auto arrange icons, and then you can drag and drop them into whatever order you want to have them, right? So if it's enabled, the icons will always be grouped one after the other, but you can kind of shift that around if you need to. And then I encourage us to use our desktops. Think of it as you would a kitchen counter or your desktop, actually your physical desktop, right? So you should treat it like a physical place where you're putting things on it while you're using it, and then clear them away afterwards, rather than just storing things using your desktop as your storage unit, right? So I will show you, I'm going to have to stop share because I have two screens and my desktop is on the other screen. So let me share that one. Now are you seeing my desktop with all the stuff on there? For me, that's a lot of stuff on my desktop. That's a lot. But I do use my notes a lot, just the notepad. And so I have a lot of those because they get stored on your desktop. So I use that quite frequently for just grabbing content, or my recurring content like my signature for Zoom meetings and all that kind of stuff. I keep in these just note text boxes. But you can see there's some stuff in here from 2023 I could probably get rid of, some rules to a card game I downloaded. So every once in a while, it's kind of good to go and just see what's on my desktop, and then other things I can get rid of. You know, maybe I need to move them into my Google Drive or move them somewhere else. They don't need to live on my desktop anymore. But here's where I right click and you can see this menu pops up. And so you can do your display settings. If you want to personalize it, that's where you can add, you know, your background pictures and that kind of stuff. But this sort by here was, I can sort it by name. So if I do that, everything moves around, right? By name. If you sort it by size, so if you want to clean up some space on your desktop, right, you could sort by size, by item type, or by date modified. So if you're like, I just put that there last week and now I can't find it, you can go by date modified and it'll organize them by the date that they were changed. I like mine by item type so I can see all of the same kind of stuff together. But it's up to you. But now you know how you can kind of organize your desktop. And then, you know, it's a good idea to go in there and look and see what you can clear off of there once in a while. Okay, let me go back to this screen here. Share and from the slide. Okay, so that's our desktop. And now we're going to go into our files. So organizing your personal files and folders. So hopefully you're using some kind of offsite storage, you know, like Google Drive or Dropbox or OneDrive or one of those kind of places where you have it on a bigger drive somewhere that's not necessarily on your hard drive. But organizing your personal files and folders, make sure whatever folders you consider pinning them to the quick access the sidebar in File Explorer. I'll show you that. So that when you're saving documents or you're opening a Word document or a Google Sheets or whatever, you can just save it right there. You don't have to, if it's Google, it saves it automatically. But let's see if I pull this up. So you can see I've got all my folders over here. So there used to be a line here, and I loved it because this is my Google Drive. Up here is my Dropbox folders. So folders that I use a lot, I just make sure I have them over there. So then I don't have to click through 20 things to get to the list, right? Or click here, I would have to click through these, you know, this whole field. So to add a new folder there, if you've got your folders here, you can just drag it and drop it over here to the quick pin access, right? And then if I don't want it there anymore, then I would just right click it, sorry. Come on. And say, oh, this one's unpinned from quick access, right? So then it just goes into my regular list. But I did that with my Google Drive and with my Dropbox. So that way I can just go in here and I can see, even though this is technically my Google Drive, I don't have to go to the internet and see all of the folders in there, right? I can just go here and see my things and click on them, and then I've got access to them easily. It makes it so easy to save documents and open documents if they're just in this quick access. And you just get that from I don't know if you can see the menu at the bottom, but it's File Explorer is the little thing you go to. And then I can see my desktop here. I can see my Gmail, my C drive, all of that kind of stuff. So it's all right here. If I needed to go see what's on my desktop and move things around or delete things, I can do it from there as well. So that's File Explorer. Again, I know I'm going through things really quickly, but when we go into the PowerPoint again, the next slide has some directions on how to sync that up. So if you've never done that before, if you've got Google Drive or you've got Dropbox, there's some links in here, some instructions. I'll make sure we have the slides attached to the recording so that you can go, or you're welcome to grab a screenshot of these, or you can just Google it. How do I make that happen, right? But that way you can have them synced up so that anything you add to your Google Drive shows up in the File Explorer, right? So then it's right there for you. And then your file cleanups. So there's always, many of us we download images, we download files, we download Zoom chats, right? All of that kind of stuff. So just going and cleaning those up, moving things from your downloads. Again, we want to try and treat that like it's a desktop or a kitchen table or a countertops or something, right? So we might put something on there temporarily, but we want to move it out of there into where it's supposed to go so that it's easier for us to find it. So if everything's in your download, you're not just going in there and having to do a search, which luckily there is a search in your download, so you can search for titles if you remember the name of something, right? But it's better to either purge those things you've already used and don't need anymore, or you can move them to the correct folder so that you know where to find them. Pictures, same thing. Like if you downloaded an image for a presentation 6 months ago and you've already got it in your presentation, you don't need to keep that in your pictures, right? So you can get rid of some of those old pictures. And then your Zoom, we're all on Zoom a lot. We save the chats, or we save a recording, or we save something like that. Zoom typically puts it in the documents folder on your C drive, on your hard drive of your computer, and it'll be a folder called Zoom, and then it'll have all the meeting chats. So if you've looked at the meeting chat, you've connected with the people you wanted to connect with, you've got the resources done, you can delete those things. You don't need to keep them necessarily, right? So go in and spend some time cleaning those things up. Okay. I realize you're just seeing this, but that's okay. Okay, so the other thing is backups, right? So we want to make sure that if you do have things in your pictures and in your downloads, those need to be backed up frequently, because if your computer gets fried, you need to be able to know where those things were. So there's lots of options. There's online options. Here's just a few: Carbonite, Shadow Protect, Backblaze. There's a lot of those out there. So where they you log in and then they grab a copy of everything that's on your hard drive. I have a big external hard drive, and I just have that again on my calendar, right? As a recurring thing on the first Monday of every month. I have a little appointment that says back up your hard drive, and I just plug it in. It takes like less than 5 minutes, backs up all my stuff, and then I unplug it, and then it's good to go until the next month. So I figure if I just have to rebuild 1 month's worth of stuff, that's better than nothing, right? So make sure you're backing up your stuff, especially if you're going to be moving things around or deleting stuff. You might accidentally delete something and you're like, oh crap. And if you've got it backed up, you can go and grab it again. So disk cleanup is another way. We get all these temporary files in our hard drive, right? So it's good, always do a backup first before you delete anything major, but you can just Google or go to your search bar by your start button and go to search for temporary files, disk cleanup in your start menu. If you look for disk cleanup, did I just do that? Maybe I did. Anyway, I'm drawing on the screen. So anyway, and then you can clean up your systems. And so it'll scan your system and it'll say, oh, you can get rid of this much space or clear up this much space if you get rid of temporary internet files, or error reports, or there's all kinds of stuff there, right? You want to be kind of cautious. It'll tell you what they are. And again, make sure you have a good backup in case you delete something you shouldn't. But it'll give you an idea of what you can download and how much space it will save you if you do that, right? So it's a good thing to do that. Once a month might be too frequently, depending on how much you're using and downloading stuff and that kind of stuff. But at least once a year, go in and do a good cleanup and get rid of some of those temporary files. All right, we're on to section 3, which is money. So our money systems, it's important that we tweak those or just take a look at those every once in a while. How is the money going through our business? So some questions you might ask: how does money move through your business, right? Does it all come into one account? Does it come in from different avenues? Do you like the second question, how do people pay you? Are you getting payments from Venmo? Are you getting some from Zelle? Are you getting some from PayPal? And then you've got to make sure you get all that transferred, or does it transfer automatically, right? Processing and tracking your invoices and your payments, any declines, those kind of things, past due notices. Do you have a process to track that as your clients are paying you? What's the cash flow? What's coming in and going out of your business every month, right? So those things can be tracked. Some of those things can be tracked in your monthly accounting reports. So your profit and loss report, your cash flow, and your balance sheet. If you've got QuickBooks or Waze or Wave, is it Waves or Wave? Wave. I always get it confused with the direction app. But there's lots of accounting software out there, or even a spreadsheet works fine too, right? Just paying attention to what's the money coming in and what's the money going out of my business every month, right? And what's left. And then taxes. We all have to pay taxes, which help us have fire engines and FEMA and roads and libraries and schools and things like that, right? So, but we have to pay them. And when it's time to pay them, we don't want to be surprised about that. So what are you doing to make sure you have money when it comes time to pay taxes? Do you have money set aside in a separate account? Or are you just going to hope you have money when it's time to pay taxes and hope the money's there? So when we look at, bank accounts, when you're setting up a business, hopefully you've been told this a million times, separate your business and your personal accounts, right? So set up a business account with a debit card so that you can easily track expenses for your business. And then don't use that to go, buy yourself a new purse or whatever, right? So make sure your business expenses are happening in your business account and your personal stuff is happening in your personal accounts. If you're going to have multiple bank accounts, really just make sure looking at the fees that you're going to be paying at the bank. So sometimes those online banks or mobile banks or a credit union will let you set up multiple accounts without having a fee or a minimum. So just make sure if you're going to set up multiple accounts that you know what your fees are, what you're paying, right? And then an emergency fund. So I originally did this workshop, it was like during COVID in 2022. So people were still reeling from having to have their businesses shut down and not having income for a while and that kind of thing. So this is just from a financial magazine, and it said a good way to prepare an emergency fund, just like you have one for your personal life, have one for your business as well. So if your business expenses, for example, are $1,000 a month to pay all your business bills, then you should try and get 6 months worth of that business expense in a bank account, right? So put $6,000 a month aside so that if you lost all your clients and had no income coming in for 6 months, you would have money to keep paying your business bills, right? So it's not fun to think about that, right? Of needing to tap into that, but it's best to prepare for the worst and hope for the best, right? So just something to think about, starting that account there. My number one, and Shannon knows this, she's heard me talk about this for a long time, right? I love the book Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. I implemented it in my business about 4 years ago now, and I absolutely love it. So it's kind of like the envelope system that Dave Ramsey does, that Sue Zorman does, all of those kind of people, right? But you do it for your business and you do it in a bank account. So you set up 5 bank accounts, income, everything comes into one account, profit, operations, taxes, and compensation. And then twice a month I go in, I have my little spreadsheet. I say, what's my income bank account total? I put that in my spreadsheet, it divides it all up. Then I just go in and transfer the money. It takes less than 5 or 10 minutes per month. And I am telling my money what to do for me. My money all has a job. I get to pay myself on a regular basis. And so it's a really great system. I'm happy to talk to anybody who has any questions about it. You can go to his book, profitfirstbook.com, and there's lots of free resources. You can get the book or listen to it. He's a great reader of his book. He's really funny. But it's a great system to help you really take control of how your money flows in your business and telling your money what it should be doing for you as a business owner too, right? So, and then you have this taxes account. So when it's time to pay taxes, like I mentioned before, you have money sitting in there and you can go pay your taxes. So, we want to look at our income, right? So making it easy for people to buy from us. So when was the last time you looked at what is your buying process? How easy is it for somebody to pay you money? Reduce the number of forms or unnecessary steps that you might have to take somebody through to get a payment. Do you have simple payment options, right? Multiple ways for people to pay you. Do you have your product or services pages? Are they very clear and easy for the person to take the next step in what they need to do to sign up with you? And then make your call to action buttons visible again with the next clear step, like click here to buy, or, whatever it is, click here to sign up or something like that, right? And then we want to make sure we're diversifying and having as many streams of revenue as we can. So we want to make sure, as much as possible, I think we're all service-based businesses. So what are some additional money streams if like for my business is coaching, right? So I have coaching one-on-one, then I have coaching in groups, and then I have my workshops, and I have courses, and I have retreats, and I have my books. So I have lots of ways that people can buy from me and different revenue streams that are all coming into my business, right? Okay, looking at expenses in our money systems. In this green box, there's a lot of these out there now. So if you want an app to go in and say, here's all your subscriptions, let me cancel some of those for you. You can pay for the app to do that. Or you can just go download your bank statements for the last 12 months and kind of go through with a highlighter and say, okay, what's a subscription on here? Because sometimes it's not monthly, it might be quarterly or it might be annually, right? So you need to be able to have a whole year to look at those. And then going through and looking at those, saying, okay, what subscriptions do I have for sometimes services or apps that you never open after the first month, right? Or supplies that you're getting automatically delivered, or, website renewals, those kind of things. Membership. So are you looking at what memberships do you pay for? Associations you belong to, networking groups you belong to. And then are there software things that you maybe don't need anymore? Domains that I buy a lot of domains because I think of a name and it's like, oh, I want that URL, right? So I'll go buy it. And then, pretty soon you're paying a lot of money for those to renew every year. So going through and saying, do I need all the domains that I have? Can I let some of those go? Or are there security apps that I paid for and now I've got that built in with something else that I bought, right? A backup service that you might have that now you got an external hard drive and you back it up manually. So just taking a look at those recurring expenses, because they can add up pretty quickly. And you might say, oh, that's only $20 a month or whatever, but they add up, right? $20 a month is $240 a year. So that recurring over year, and you're never using it, that's, a couple nice dinners out or a nice bag or a vacation or whatever you want to spend it on, right? And then just make sure your expenses are being categorized properly in your accounting software. If you have QuickBooks or Waze or whatever, that you're tracking those expenses so that you can easily pull a report and say, let me see what I spent on rent, or let me see what I spent on office supplies or whatever. So the more you can categorize those so that you can easily see a total, it will help you at the end of the year. All right, receipts. So save those receipts so you can just, again, take as many off as that's part of the joy of being a business owner. We get these deductions, right? So there's lots of ways you can scan those and organize them electronically. Some of them may be included with your software that you're already using, right? So if you use Wave or QuickBooks or Zoho Expenses, they all have an app in there to help you scan. So it's part of the software you're already paying for, so you don't need to add another one. But if you don't have one of those softwares, if you do it manually in a spreadsheet or something, there's lots of these other ones where you can just scan the receipt. It takes a picture of it, and then you can categorize it in that app as well. And then some of them import into your software. So there's lots of those out there. You can play around with them and see which one, but check with your accounting software first because they probably already have something for you. But that way you don't have a stack of receipts sitting around your office or floating around your purse or at the bottom of a shoebox or something like that. And then your business credit card, right? It's great to start with a business credit card if you can get one because it helps you start establishing business credit. And there's all kinds of rewards. So what's going to be more important to you? Is it more important to get cash back in your business, or do you want one that has travel rewards, right? So just looking at that. And then there's some great tools for finding the best card for you, which is like NerdWallet or Bankrate. You can go in and plug in some of your details about your business and your credit, and then they'll say, based on that, here's the best cards we think for you. And then you can click through and do an application, right? So just make sure you're using it to build credit, tracking expenses, getting some rewards. But if you don't pay it off every month or pay, if you let it get too high, then you're paying a high interest rate and it's costing you money. So we want to make sure you're looking at that every time you're opening a card. All right, part 4, 10 minutes left. Whew. Okay, so email and follow-up systems. According to a survey conducted by Adobe, they found that American workers spend a total of 5 hours a day checking their emails, both personal and professional. So 5 hours a day, that's a lot. And we do a lot of our work in our emails, right? I get a lot of stuff that I need to get done or client requests or those kind of things in my inbox. So it's not a bad tool. It's a great tool, in fact, but we just need to be more focused on how we use it. So there are some people that are inbox 0, right? Or there's me like a blend, right? I have a number. So hitting delete, 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 it can be very satisfying and it appears that we're doing work because we're in our email, we're doing something, right? We're getting that little dose of serotonin or, it's like, okay, I'm doing something, taking activity. And we might be doing it because it makes us feel good or it makes us feel like we're working. But sometimes it's not always useful. Maybe you don't need a clean inbox. You need another barometer of a successful day, right? So again, that's the 80-20 rule. Is cleaning my inbox really going to be getting my inbox to 0 every day, really getting me the 80% of results that I want, right? So, however, ignoring your inbox can also add more stress. So we don't want to just let it pile up because then that's stressful. So find the blend, find the number that works for you. For me, it's about 200, 225. If it starts getting above that in my inbox unread emails, then I start getting stressed, like I'm missing something or I'm behind in responding to somebody. So, I couldn't tell you if I've ever had my business email down to 0. I get my personal one down to 0 because it's mostly junk mail in there, so I can delete a lot of that stuff, right? But what works for you, and then what's the best use of your time to get it to that place where you're comfortable, right? So your 5 Ds for managing your inbox is do. If it takes less than 2 minutes to respond, just respond. Just get it done. Don't wait. Just do it. Delete. Hit delete. I love the shift button and then go 10 down. You can kind of scroll down. I don't need those 10 shift. It highlights all 10, delete all 10 at once, right? I love doing big chunks of deletion. So hit delete or take 10 seconds to click the unsubscribe button if you're going through one by one. If it's an email you don't no longer want. And then defer. If it'll take more than 2 minutes to formulate your response, you can hit reply and then leave it in your drafts to come back to complete it. We're going to talk about that in a minute as well. Then designate, move the email to an appropriate folder, so like to be read later or to respond to later or whatever, or delegate. Can you give it to somebody else to handle the task? If you've got a virtual assistant or somebody else that can handle that task for you. So those are your 5 Ds. And then, really checking your email, not being in your email all day long is going to help you. So I keep a timer right here at my desk, right? I have it on for our time here. So I know I have 5 minutes left. But whenever I'm going to do a work chunk, I either put on my focus music for that amount of time or I set my timer. So that way I know I'm going to go into my email. I'm going to get through as many as I can in 1 hour, right? And that's where that really those 5 Ds come in handy, because you'll know, okay, if I have to delete so many, I might go through and delete all the ones I just don't even need to look at first, and then go back and go through the ones I need to respond to, right? Schedule some time blocks for answering emails. So no less than 90 minutes, or at least 2 or 3 times per day, right? Most of us don't work in a life-threatening, business. So if we don't get back to our clients for a couple of hours, they're not going to lose their life about it, right? Maybe, depending on what you do for a living, but most of us can wait. Most of our clients can wait 2 hours before hearing from us. So if you said, I'm going to check it in the morning, I'll check it at noon, I'll check it at 4 o'clock, right? Fine. I even have some clients who have that in their email signature. I only check my email at 4 o'clock every day. I'll get back to you within 24 hours, right? So you set the expectations for how you're going to be available. And then if you can block off those chunks to go in and just manage what showed up. This is going back to that using your drafts folder as your to-do list. So if you're scrolling, open only those emails that need a reply. You can either answer it if it's less than 2 minutes, answer it right then. Or if you need to go and think about something or go grab resources or format your response, then just hit the reply, but then save it as a draft to your drafts folder instead of sending it. And then when you go to your next work block, come back and say, I want to clear out all my drafts first, right? So then you can go back and formulate those. And then your goal becomes an empty drafts folder rather than an empty inbox. So you've gotten all the responses out that you needed to get out that day, right? All right, and then create folders, labels, organize your emails. So you can create a folder that says reply by each day of the week. So that if you need to reply to somebody by Friday, you can throw that email in the reply by Friday. When Friday or Thursday comes, you can say, okay, what needs to get a reply by tomorrow? I got to answer all these emails, right? So there's lots of ways depending on how your brain works. Setting up some automatic filters so that, for example, if you get Facebook notifications or LinkedIn notifications, you can set a folder that all of those go into one folder, and then you go in once a week and look at those and, delete them or look what you need to do. Use your canned responses in your Gmail or Outlook, it's called Notes, so that you don't have to retype the same content over and over again. You create one canned response. I think they're called something else now in Gmail, actually, but and then you just click that in, insert it into your email, and you're done. You don't have to retype that. Use your out of office. When you're out of office, definitely. But even when you're busy or you're working on a project, if you're going to be unavailable to work, like you really need to have a day of focus, then put your out of office on and say, hey, I'm having a thinking day. I'm having a working day today, right? Leave me an email. I'll get back to you tomorrow. But it's a great way to let people know that you're not going to get back to them via email that same day. And then know it's okay not to reply to every email. I just had this happen this week where we were kind of got stuck in this thank you gratitude, oh, you're so great. And then, oh, you're so great. Thank you for this. Somebody sent me something. It's like, thank you for sending that. And then making this connection. And then it was like 6 emails long. It was like, finally, it was like, okay, I'm done, replying to this love fest. It was a great thing. But at the same time, it's like, I don't need to continue this email chain. So it's okay not to respond to every email. And then for follow-up. So again, calendar blocks for follow-up are great so that you can, I used to have one every Friday morning, and I'd put the name of the person I needed to follow up with or make an introduction to or whatever. So then at the end of the week, I would just go in and just be able to crank all those out. So you can do that in your work blocks. And then if you've got a CRM that allows you to do that as well, you can create a task or reminder with a follow-up and a date and a reason, right? So now I've got a CRM that allows me to put that information in there. I need to follow up with this person, and I kind of can follow them through my sales pipeline or my networking pipeline. So depending on how built out your CRM is, you can start with just a calendar block or an Excel spreadsheet. And then if you get a CRM, you can have it do some of that reminding for you. Okay, upcoming events I have going on. So if you like all these practical uses, you can see how practical, I love these practical implementable tips. I have a new workshop coming up on Wednesday, November 13th. It's only $27, but that's ChatGPT 10 practical uses for service-based solopreneurs. So it's a 1 hour workshop. I'll be going through all of my resources and tips and tools and best practices, and you'll leave with some great prompts that you'll be able to use in your business and a better understanding of how you can use chat in your business. And then I have my CEO time planning days review and renews coming up in December. So if you're live in Colorado and you want to join us, that's Friday, December 6th. Wednesday, December 11th is on Zoom. Registration's coming this Friday. We're at October 10th today. So by the 15th, it'll be open. And you can always go to my website. You can download free resources. There's an events page. You can check out the blog, and there's great resources and products. That's my timer. Thank you for being part of today's workshop. If we have just a minute, we could ask for any ahas or questions or anything like that. I know I crammed a lot of information into this workshop. So any questions? As I just talked for 45 minutes straight.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Mary. Such great tips and reminders, and some of it I haven't seen or thought of, so I definitely took some notes.
Good. Yeah. And some of these things, it's not like you're going to do them every day, but once every 6 months or so, go clean up your desktop, right? So just good reminders to keep those business systems uncluttered and smoothly, so that we can make sure we're running the most efficient business we can.
That was excellent. Thank you so much, Mary. That was like opening up your brain and getting a snapshot of how you stay so organized and seamless. It looks really easy, but I look at all the different things that you're doing. It really makes a difference in running your business. So thank you for sharing all that great stuff.
Yeah. And, I've developed all of these systems kind of over 11 years of running both businesses, right? So you don't have to implement all of these things. You could take one of these things and say, I'm going to do that one thing, right? Start with one process and then start from where you are. So, whatever works best for you. But like I said, I crammed this 4 weeks of content into 1 hour. So I'm really fast.
You did that amazingly well.
Good.
One thing is to know what to do. The other is to take the time to do it, right?
Yes. Yeah.